Now, if you walk up to a random person and you ask them just to name a random amusement park, I think the first thing they'd come up with is Walt Disney World. Walt Disney World is a massive resort featuring 6 very clean and immersive theme parks. There are 4 dry parks and there are 2 water parks, and I've been lucky enough to have visited every dry park multiple times since 2014. However, I have not visited any of the water parks, so I will not be talking about them in this review. The 4 Disney parks are Magic Kingdom, the one with the castle, Epcot, the one with the big golf ball, Hollywood Studios, the one that is best for thrill seekers, and Animal Kingdom, the one that everyone forgets about, however, it is the prettiest one. All of these parks are very good on paper, but in reality, well, we'll get to that later. We'll start off with the pros of the Disney parks. They're all very nice, clean parks, and there are a lot of rides to help spread out the crowds. In fact, I'd say the rides are top tier for what they are. Disney has some of the greatest rides of all time. Rise of the Resistance and Guardians of the Galaxy are some of the greatest rides in their category. But these parks also have some super iconic rides such as Space Mountain and Tower of Terror. In this review, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly because our last experience really wasn't the best, and there are some big issues that could really just be fixed with some small changes. So first, I'm just going to go over the parks. As I said earlier, there are 4 parks in the resort: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom. Magic Kingdom is the oldest park, opening in 1971, and it really shows. The park is filled with old classics such as Haunted Mansion and Space Mountain, and it was the only park built under the supervision of Walt Disney. The park overall is a nice park, but still is probably one of the weaker Disney parks. The next park to be built was Epcot. Epcot is themed to the future, or at least the future in 1981. Parts of it are starting to look a little dated, but recently there has been a lot of construction, and they are fixing it up. Epcot is split up into 2 parts, or at least it used to be. Future World, or again, it used to be, but now it's split up into smaller parts, but it's still the exact same, in World Showcase. I haven't really been into the World Showcase because it's mostly just about the food, and I don't really go to theme parks for the food because it costs a lot of money and it's usually a really slow line, and also I'm just not big into food, so there's not really much I can tell about World Showcase other than it's really pretty. Now, Future World, or whatever it's called now, I'm still going to call it Future World because it's the exact same. That I can review because I wouldn't call this a review if I couldn't review 1/4 of the place I'm reviewing, if that makes any sense. Future World has most of the rides, such as Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, and Test Track. And let me just say, even though it's amazing that Epcot went 40 years before it got a coaster, I think it was well worth it because Guardians is a masterpiece. Spaceship Earth is a long, slow journey through our history, and it 100% needs an update, but I think it's pretty good for what it is. Test Track is the fastest ride the Disney company has ever constructed, and it was my favorite Disney ride until Guardians. And Journey to Imagination with Figment is a fun ride that I think gets way too much hate. Now, Epcot does still have a little bit of its history with some of its older educational rides, such as Living with the Land and Spaceship Earth, that are slow, old, again, educational rides, which is the reason why Epcot did fail in the beginning. And I really don't understand why anybody thought this would be a good idea. Like, who in the world is going to spend their life savings to ride a bunch of slow educational boat rides that last 45 minutes? So thank you, Disney, for giving Epcot some enjoyable rides and not making it a second place in Orlando where parents would have to drag their kids on a supposedly fun vacation. Hollywood Studios is most people's favorite park because it is more for the thrill seekers. It has the only roller coaster with inversions at the resort, Rock and Roller Coaster, and has arguably the most intense ride with Tower of Terror. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is a good trackless dark ride that really shows off what all the ride system can do, and Rise of the Resistance is arguably the best dark ride in the world. Animal Kingdom is a beautiful park themed to the planet and has some of the most stunning centerpieces in the world. So as you can see, when you look at the parks, they look really good. But now I'm going to explain why it would probably just be in your best interest to just visit your local Six Flags park instead of getting a second mortgage on your house to take your family to Disney World. The first and most obvious reason is the crowds. Magic Kingdom is the most visited park in the world, and it is also one very small park. You know Islands of Adventure, the park that you should visit instead? Well, it's just a few acres larger, and it sees half the crowds Magic Kingdom does in a year. Yeah, it's pretty bad, and you know what that means? Some of the longest lines I've ever seen. On my most recent visit to Disney on the week of Thanksgiving, we were lucky to find a ride under 100 minutes on both of the days we were there, which is why I highly recommend FastPass. FastPass is basically the only way to ride rides, and Disney has made it super simple, so all you have to do is... What? Okay, what? I'm recording. Well, they got rid of FastPass? What do you mean? Why did they get rid of FastPass? What do you mean? Genie Plus, what the heck? What is that? Okay, in all seriousness, FastPass was the only way to ride stuff at parks. It took me 4 trips to Disney before I even realized that you could just wait in a line and not have to book it. FastPass was the only way to ride rides at Disney, and because all Disney cares about is money, they got rid of the only way to ride rides without standing in line for 3 hours. And let's say you go just on a random day in March, just random day, and you go for 11 hours. You spend 11 hours there. That means that 3 hours of your time that you spent at Disney would cost about $40 worth of your time. That means you spend $40 just to wait in line. That means $40 of your money is going in the bin just for waiting in line for that ride. You know what I mean? Like, Disney's expensive, and with those kind of wait times, for what you get for just about the amount of stuff that you can ride, it's not really worth it. You're going to spend most of your money that you spend, all of that money, most of that day is going to be waiting in line. And so when they had FastPass, it was nice because then you could just book a ride. Then you don't have to wait. You can spend your day doing other stuff, just whether that be looking around at the parks or just riding another ride. But you know what? Guess what? They got rid of it, and what they replace it with? Genie Plus. Genie Plus is really the exact same thing as FastPass, but instead you have to pay for it, usually costing around $20 to $30 a day per person, and you can only book one ride at a time instead of the 3 that you could previously book with FastPass. That means that you're basically paying now for Genie Plus, which isn't even as good as FastPass in the first place. So you're paying for less, basically. And you really actually can't even buy it until the parks open, instead of, being able to buy it 30 days in advance, which even when you're in a Disney resort, when you used to be able to get 60 days in advance, now you still can't even just get until 7 a.m. So yeah, they want you to spend triple the price on their hotel rooms just so you can get a worse FastPass 2 hours earlier than everyone else. Oh, and did I mention that you can only book one every 2 hours? Yes. With FastPass, you can get 3 at a time just as a start, and you could easily get 6 FastPasses a day. And with Genie Plus, you get 1 every 2 hours. Now, I will say, you can technically book a Genie Plus reservation right after you ride the ride booked. For example, we were able to get a ride on Spaceship Earth 5 minutes after we booked it, meaning that we rode it without a line and then got to book 2 rides within 15 minutes, because as soon as you ride a ride that you previously booked, you can go ahead and book another one. The issue is that ride only had a 5-minute wait anyway, so it didn't even really matter. I just kind of did it just so that I could say we got an extra ride out of Genie Plus. Another issue we had is that you basically need to buy Genie Plus right at opening, because on our first day at Disney, we got to Animal Kingdom an hour after opening and bought Genie Plus about 30 minutes after we got there. We realized that we would need it if we wanted to ride anything, so we bought it about 11:30 in the morning. And guess what? None of the rides that we wanted to ride we could get with Genie Plus. They were already full. So we ended our 12-hour day at Disney with a total of 4 rides, none of which we used Genie Plus for. Luckily, we went to customer services and they did move it to our second day. And one more pro about Disney is that the cast members are the best. They're always super helpful and super friendly. Now back to the Genie Plus story. If we didn't have a second day at Disney, we would have been $30 down the drain for each of the 5 people in my group for no reason. Now, once again, I will say we were there over the week of Thanksgiving, which I've heard is the busiest week that they get in the year. So there is that, but still, Disney should be able to handle these kinds of crowds, and this kind of experience, I wouldn't expect that. Even if the parks were really busy, they should still be really used to it. Like, this is something that I find maybe at like Six Flags, where they don't usually get these kinds of days, but Disney, they get this kind of stuff still a lot. So I still expect them to be able to kind of handle this. And especially for being really expensive, because it's one of the more busy days, it really was just really disappointing. The one good thing about getting our lightning lanes moved was the fact that we were able to start booking at 7 in the morning instead of when the parks open, which means that by the time the parks open, that we already had 2 rides booked. So yeah, at least that's one good thing. Another bad thing is that, did I mention that the most popular ride in each park doesn't even come with Genie Plus? Oh yeah, those will cost an extra $10 to reserve. If there are any spots. For example, Rise of the Resistance was full by 11 a.m. in the morning. Although there is one nice thing about it that's okay, is that you don't have to have the regular Genie Plus to be able to book the more popular ride. For example, if you just want to ride Rise of the Resistance and you know that you won't take advantage of the full lightning lane options for $30, you can just spend $10 just to get Rise of the Resistance. Now, if you have the full lightning lane and you want to get everything, that will cost you extra, which when you're already spending $150 per person, and then that includes the parking and all the food and everything else you're going to spend at Disney, it adds up pretty quickly, and it would have just been nice if you could just gotten it for free with FastPass. And if you thought that was confusing, just wait until I get into virtual queues. How virtual queues work is basically a new ride will open and a lot of people want to ride it. So basically they don't put in a regular queue because that would be like 300 minutes, which is actually pretty normal for Disney. Instead, they will put in a virtual queue. How the virtual queue works is you book a reservation for what you want to ride, just like Genie Plus. Instead, it's free because that's the only option. So don't get too excited about that. But unlike Genie Plus, reservations are opened up at 2 different times per day instead of all at once. At 7 a.m., the first opening, you can head into the Disney app and you can book a virtual queue for Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. You can only book a ride on Guardians if you have a reservation for Epcot that day. I'll explain reservations later, but if you manage to get into the virtual queue, you'll be put into a boarding group. Once your boarding group is called, then you can get in line. So yes, it's basically just a reservation to get in line. The good thing is that the line probably won't get over like 45 minutes. For example, we only waited about 20 minutes after we got in line because of the small amount of people that can get in line at a time and because Guardians of the Galaxy had a super high capacity. However, I do recommend still trying to book your virtual queues at the 7 a.m. opening because then you'll be able to get a ride on in the morning, which I will explain why that's better later. But let's say you get into the Disney app at 7:01 and all the virtual queues were gone, which is a very possible situation that almost happened to us. Do not fret because Disney has a solution for you. They will also release virtual queues at 1 p.m. Now, here's my issue with the 1 p.m. openings. You must be inside the park that the ride is in to book a virtual queue at 1. Now, you might be thinking, well, if I get a park hopper, then I can just go to Epcot at 1 and book a ride on Guardians, even if my reservation for the day is for Magic Kingdom. That's what I thought. Well, actually, that's not what happened. When you buy a park hopper, that still means you have to reserve a park for what you want to start your day in. And park hoppers become valid at 2 p.m. That means that unless you have a reservation for Epcot, you cannot ride Guardians that day unless you buy the individual Lightning Lane for $10, which will be gone as soon as the park opens. Oh, and did I mention that you can only book 1 virtual queue per ride per day? That means that if you want to ride Guardians 3 times, you'd either be lucky enough to book 1 virtual queue and then spend $20 to buy 2 individual Lightning Lanes, which I can still believe you can only get 1 per day, which means you'd still have to go for 2 days. Or the more likely situation, you'd have to spend 3 days at Disney, get a virtual queue for every single one of those days, which would be very lucky if you did. And then you have to spend the first half of every single one of those days at Epcot, which I can say is not really a good idea. There's not really enough to do there to have a half of 3 days at Epcot. So you really just can't ride Guardians of the Galaxy 3 times until they open the queue, which will be a 90-minute wait minimum on most days. So why do I recommend you get a virtual queue at 7 instead of at 1? Well, you can't really pick when you're called to ride. They just fill up the boarding groups as people reserve, meaning that the earlier you reserve, the earlier you ride. The issue is that if you have a park hopper and you reserve Guardians at the 1 o'clock openings, then you shouldn't leave Epcot until you ride that, whether that be at 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Why? Because if you do, then you will just have to leave the park and then just eventually come back. And this isn't like Universal. You can't get from park to under 5 minutes. These parks are miles apart, and they can take you close to an hour to get from one to the other. So by the time you get to another park, your boarding group would probably be about ready to be called. So you just have to go straight back, and you waste several hours of your day. And another issue that adds on to that is that the time predictions aren't really the best. When we got our Guardians virtual queue book, the app said that we would be called around 1:30 p.m. We were called at 11:15. So you could imagine that if you booked your virtual queue at 1, your time prediction will probably be even less accurate than mine was. So if you can, just try to buy a Lightning Lane, especially if you can't get into the 7 o'clock opening, because yes, even though you won't get to go through the queue and you'll have to pay an extra $10, it makes it much easier to plan your day and really saves you stress and time. Another problem that I touched on earlier is that the size of Disney is massive. Most resorts with multiple parks have them right next to each other. For example, Disneyland or Universal, like right down the road. And the entrances for those two are right next to each other. Walt Disney World is not like that. Each park is at least a 20-minute monorail or bus ride or car ride minimum. We drove from Animal Kingdom to Hollywood Studios, and it took nearly an hour. Taking the tram from Animal Kingdom to our car, driving to Hollywood Studios, parking in the back of the parking lot because it's the middle of the day, and then walking to the front of the park to get into security again. All of that just to go from park to park. It's just a pain. Universal, on the other hand, you can just walk out of the park and walk a few hundred feet to the other park. And the walk from one park to the other park is really pretty too, with City Walk on the river. Disney, I mean, if you love cars and trees, then yeah, you'll love it. So as you can see, Universal is much better than Disney in a lot of ways, but Disney does have some strengths too. Disney tends to have more productive and friendly employees. Not to say that Universal employees are necessarily rude. In fact, I'd say they're actually pretty nice. It's just Disney's on a different level. Disney employees act like if they're rude, then they're going to get the job of being in those meet and greet costumes. So yeah, I definitely understand why they're so nice then. Universal employees are still nice, but they're not really anything special. Nothing really stands out. It's like going to a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you don't really pay attention to the employees and how nice they are. You obviously pay attention to the food and how good it is. Now, you'll notice if the server is especially nice or not, but like in general, you don't really pay attention to them. Universal and Disney are like Wendy's and Chick-fil-A when it comes to employees, at least. Wendy's employees are like Universal employees. They're not nice, but they're not mean. They're just kind of like, have a nice day, and they'll be friendly, but it's not like they don't have a reputation for being nice. Chick-fil-A employees, they have a reputation for being nice, just like Disney employees. Now, Chick-fil-A has fast service, but in this universe, for example, Wendy's has faster service. Universal has the faster operations, so the employees are more focused on safely starting the ride than how good your day has been so far. Disney employees seem to take more time to go out of their way to make sure you have a great experience, while still managing to have pretty fast dispatches. Okay, that was a very big explanation for a simple point. Another great thing about Disney is that they put so many people in debt because of how expensive they are that they can build a lot of expensive rides very often. It's just too bad they take forever to do it. Though the issue with this is that the parks never feel complete. I feel like there's always things being done. I hate seeing half-finished things, and it gives me a satisfaction when things are complete. So when Disney is gonna build stuff so often and they're just always construction, the parks just never feel completed. I know that Disney is trying to do their best to hide it, but it really frustrates me when I go to Epcot and half of the park, like right in the middle of it too, is closed for construction. And when I go back 2 years later, it is still closed. It's the same thing with Tron taking so long to build. Kids who were born when it was announced would be tall enough to ride it. In fact, because I'm a tall kid, I could ride a B&M Hyper by now if I was born when Tron was announced. Like, this is ridiculous. It took Universal less than 2 years to build Hagrid's, and that's including the time it took to demolish the 2 large B&M inverts that were formerly in its plot of land. And then the land prepping, and to build a coaster that is 2,000 feet longer than Tron, and add all the scenery, including the thousands of trees. And Disney took 3 times longer to build the coaster that they had already built once. Universal's about to build a whole park in the same amount of time it took Disney to build a short motorbike coaster that they've already built before. Now, I will give credit to Disney that they generally have more immersive rides and are usually better when it comes to everything but the thrill. Like, when you think about it, if Universal didn't have Hagrid's or Velocicoaster, then in my opinion, it wouldn't be better than Disney or be really close. Like, Universal has Hagrid's and Velocicoaster, which are amazing. Then it's like Hulk, Forbidden Journey, and Spider-Man, which are, they're great. They're still good rides, but then it's just a bunch of screen dark rides. Disney has Guardians, Tron, Rise of Resistance, and Tower of Terror, all of which are like S-tier amazing rides. But then they also have Runaway Railway, Test Track, Expedition Everest, and then depending on who you ask, Mission Space, Space Mountain, and Rock and Roller Coaster. Then also Flight of Passage, and just many other rides that Universal can't compete with. And while Universal does have others like Mummy and Gringotts, along with a couple others, Mummy is just a roller coaster with some small turns, a weak launch, and one decent drop that I probably only liked because it caught me by surprise. It kind of bored me. And Gringotts is just a ramp with some turns, and then look, it's just another dark ride. And it's definitely not like there's like 8, soon to be 9 other dark rides in the same park, right? Most of which are 3D simulators, which is basically what Gringotts is after the ramp and slow turns. I mean, Disney also does this. They have 3 mine trains, but in their defense, they're separated over 2 parks and are themed to completely different places. Like, one is themed to a mountain in the desert, one is themed to a mountain in the Himalayas, and one is themed on a hill with a bunch of tiny old men. And oh, they all go in and out of their mountains or hills multiple times. Yeah, completely different. Disney also beats Universal when it comes to what you can bring on rides. Most rides at Universal have lockers and metal detectors, meaning that you can't ride with anything but your clothes. I believe that you can get small lockers for free, but if you have a backpack or something large, then you'll have to pay a couple bucks for them. We've always left our backpacks with our grandparents because they won't ride a lot of rides, but we did all ride Hagrid's once, and we had to pay for lockers. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but it's a little bit of an inconvenience, and I just wish there was more of a free option where it was just all free lockers. I mean, Disney says screw it to bag policies, and they just let you bring everything on, backpacks and all. I actually saw a man bring his backpack on Rock and Roller Coaster, which goes upside down multiple times, and the ride operators just let him. In fact, they probably told him to bring it on because there isn't really anywhere else to put your stuff. And also, you could just tell by the look in his face that he wasn't really okay with bringing his backpack on the ride, but what else do you do? That's what they told him to do, and there's nowhere else to put it. I mean, the unload station is somewhere else, so, I mean, you just gotta have to bring it on, so probably didn't really want to. But, like, could you imagine if, like, they let you do this at a Six Flags park? This is ABC DEFG HIJK LMNOP QRS TUV WX YZ Nightly News Tonight. I'm Chase Fantanza, your host, and this is the breaking news for tonight. Starting off with our breaking news, a 6-year-old boy gets hit in the face with a backpack on a supposedly fun Six Flags trip. Natalie Newsman has more.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, it was absolutely incredible the way that flying backpack hit that kid. I mean, it's hit him hard. He is gonna be scarred for life. He's gonna have nightmares for life. It was terrible. I'm telling you, it was awful.
Breaking news. A 6-year-old boy was hit in the face today with an oncoming backpack from Batman, the Joker, and Robin's chilling Ultimate Flight, The Ride. The child is in critical condition at a nearby hospital. We will be showing footage of the incident. Viewer discretion is advised.
Look, Mommy, it's the world's tallest roller coaster. Yeah, so where were we? Right. Disney has weird bag policies, but they actually work, I guess. Here's another thing that Universal has above Disney, and that is the land. Yes, I know that Universal is smaller than Disney, but I think that is actually an advantage when it comes to the guest experience. It is an advantage for multiple reasons. The first reason is parking. At Universal, there are 2 parking garages, and they are right next to each other. Because they are garages, that means that the walk from the back of the parking lot to the front isn't very far. Disney has a parking lot for each of the park, and it can easily take up to 15 minutes to walk from your car to the front of the lot. In fact, if you add up all of the parking lots at Disney, it would probably come close to the size of the entire Universal Resort. And another perk of having one parking complex is that you only have to go through security once. And while you might be thinking that if everyone has to go through the same security line at once, that means the line would probably take forever. Actually, the massive security line at Universal was shorter, if not just as long as the security line at the Disney parks. And at the Disney parks, you'd have to be going through the security line multiple times if you wanted to change parks, whereas at Universal, it's one security line and you're in the entire place, so you only have to go through once. So the security time is actually longer at Disney than it is at Universal. Another issue with all the land is that Disney can expand as much as they want because they basically have unlimited land. In fact, only about 20% of Disney's 25,000 acres are developed. Just to put into perspective, Animal Kingdom, which is the largest of the Disney parks and the largest theme park in the world, is about 450 acres. So yeah, Disney basically has unlimited land, meaning that the parks can grow as large as they like. And while most parks would think, wow, that's a dream come true, unlimited land, there's a problem with that, is that when they build a new ride, they will just use new land instead of replacing the old rides. And you might think that that's good, right? Wrong. That means that no matter how bad the ride is, as long as it's turning a profit, they will keep it open. That means that Disney is also full of old, outdated rides. If we were at Universal, Tron would have replaced Space Mountain, or Space Mountain would have gotten a large refurbishment. But because we're at Disney and they have so much land, that because Space Mountain's already turning a profit the way it is, might as well just build Tron right next to it. I mean, look at Tokyo Disneyland. They're having to refurbish Space Mountain because, well, they want to add a new ride, but they don't have the room for it. So unless they want to remove Space Mountain and add something else, or they can refurbish it, and they chose the refurbished route, which is fine. Magic Kingdom would never do that because Space Mountain's already turning a profit the way it is. But then you might be thinking, well, if the old rides are already making a profit, then why replace them? Well, if you don't add any new rides, then you won't get any new customers. New rides are how parks get their attendance up. So if Disney stopped adding new rides, then a lot less people would come. Most parks would simply just replace the least performing ride with a new one because the new rides tend to be the most popular rides for a while. Basically, because Disney has so much land, they won't replace any rides, they'll just expand for new rides, meaning that all the older rides stay, making most of those rides outdated. And why refurbish the ride when it's still making you money and you could just use that money to build a brand new ride? So overall, the Disney parks are great parks, and I really do like them, and I'm happy to go to them. It's just that because of all these issues, they just don't really make them worth it for such a high price tag. It's like what I said, these parks are, on paper, really good parks. It's just mainly how they are run. That's the reason why they're just such a poor experience. So what I really think Disney need to do is that they need to think of, what would Walt do? Because I could assure you that he would not be happy if he saw his company today. I know they could start off with bringing back FastPass and getting rid of Genie Plus, or lowering the prices so that they don't put people in debt. It's all these just small things that they could just tweak, and then it would just make the guest experience so much better. Because really, in the end, it's not that bad. I mean, it would be worth it if the price tag wasn't just so high. I would have been fine if we had to wait a long time. But when you're spending, $20 an hour almost on that kind of time, it's just not worth it. That's my big issue. For the price that you pay, Disney is not worth it. So what I really think is that they just need to change off these little things, especially bring back FastPass, and all these issues would be resolved. This video would not be here. I can almost guarantee you this video would be completely different if they just kept FastPass and you didn't have to pay for Genie Plus and you could ride all the rides just like you used to be able to. So that's my real issue here. Just fix these small little issues and then the parks will be great again. So what do you think of Disney World? Do you think I went a little too hard on Disney? I mean, maybe so, but this is just my opinion, and this is just my experience based off of what happened last time. Feel free to write any of your thoughts in the comments below, as long as just try to be respectful. So with that said, please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, because this took a lot of time to make. And please have a thrilling rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.